welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK. Hello. How are we all doing?
Hello. I'm fine, mate. I think we just lost. Oh, no, she's back. That's right. Oh, cool.
Don't break the illusion, Hugh. We're a well-oiled machine. We know what we're doing. Nothing ever goes wrong here. It's all good. Oh, we got a lot
people
of
in already. Look.
Yeah, I was about to say we got a lot of folks in already, haven't we? A lot of folks coming and saying hello, which is lovely stuff. So, hi,
good evening, everybody.
Yeah. How you doing, Hugh?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's all ticking along down here in Somerset. Had a couple of nice sunny days.
Right. Sorry, not to talk about the weather, but we are British. So I've just spent the last 3 days up in Scotland, where it's been actually quite pleasant, sunny, if not balmy weather. And I've just got back today to my little containers down in Basingstoke, and all of the cladding's come off it because we've had, apparently in my absence, some incredible winds and storms down south. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah. Okay.
Which day? I can't remember which day it was now. It's all the week's been a blur, but yeah, it was pretty. We had a bit of sleet and a bit of hail and rain and wind, but we had some absolutely lovely days as well, because I can't remember if we said it on the news. Saw a few queen wasps out already, mooching about.
Which will be absolutely battered if it's been sleeting. That's not going to be good for them. Yeah. Oh, waking up another beautiful year. Oh, what the fuck is this?
It is a little bit early, I must admit, I think.
So, I mean, the thing with that is I've been meaning, so I've bought these shipping containers and converted them into offices years ago. And put the cladding on them, sprayed it with all of the antifungal stuff, and the cladding's done really well. But over the last, let's say, 6 months, it started to disengage itself from the shipping container, go a little bit skewy, and I've been like, I need to replace this. But have you seen the cost of wood at the moment? The cost of shiplap, I may as well just buy a second container for the cost of it. So I've been putting it off, and of course I turned up today, and all of the cladding's has been yeeted across the car park. So I kind of can't put it off anymore, which is really upsetting because I don't want to spend that money. But if I don't, my little containers just look shoddy as fudge. So
I wanted a 3 foot by 3 foot piece of ply, and our local timber merchants closed down. They've been there for years. Absolutely wonderful. Go in, they cut you a bit of ply. Fantastic. So I looked online. They want 120 quid for a 3 foot by 120 quid for a 3 foot by 3 foot piece of ply, and we're only talking about 1 centimeter thickness. It was absolutely meant. Maybe I went to the wrong place, but
I think you have. If we're talking 9mm ply,
ply online.
Okay. No, as in 9mm, as in as opposed to 12mm. Okay.
Yeah, I went to there was a site called Ply Online.
Yeah, I think that should be a site called Scams or Us. £120.
Talking about a scam, and I'm not going to mention the name of the company. Just out of interest. How's this then? So you've got a pest control company in looking after your site, and they've got nicely got traps in all the boxes on the outside, which is great. They've got 30 boxes with traps in, but they've got a rat problem. But they want to charge extra to put bait in the boxes. That seems a little bit like, ooh, that's a bit odd. So you have a routine regular service every month, but now you want extra money to put bait in the box. It seems a bit.
Go on. You told me about this earlier today, and I have been thinking about it. Right, and it's all, my camera is really on one today. So I don't know. Remember, Hugh, do you remember when we were young? Roughly speaking, like
Just
you'd buy a computer game or something like that, let's say Command and Conquer, because everyone played Command and Conquer, but you'd buy it on a CD and you own that CD and that CD was yours. And then when you wanted to play, the DLC from that, you'd end up sort of like, buying the DLC and it came on another disc and the rest of it. Now, these days, you go online, the game is free or next to free, almost nothing. And how the companies make their money is through sort of like upselling microtransactions. You can have different skins, you can do this, that,
yeah,
X, Y, and Z. And it's become a very popular, if not the leading, like contract model, let's say, in a lot of things, not just games now. It's going across to almost, all of these packages. So with that,
yeah.
this is basically what they're doing, isn't it? You've got your standard package, mate. But hang on, if you want the blue block package, then you're going to have to go for another sort of like £2.50 a blocks. And if you want this, I'm not
If you actually want us to control the rat issue, then it's going to cost you extra.
exactly that. You want the upgrade from the standard boxes to the boxes at work? Well, that's going to be an X, Y, and Z. But
Yeah,
I have for a long time said that our industry is really lacking in some creative contract negotiating contract. So a bit of me
that's
thinks
creative.
scammy bastards, but another bit of me thinks it's a model that works. It's clearly, think about it. There's nothing, you can set up your contracts however you like. There's nothing saying your contract has to be the standard 12 visits a year, or one visit a month. You can negotiate anything. I'm still very much in favor of negotiating a contract that says I will give you X number of visits a year and then 4 for free, so long as you do all of your recommendations and so long as you do all of your sort of like actions that I give you. But if you don't do your recommendations and you don't do your actions, then I will charge you this amount per callback after the fact. And so with that, people
So,
think, I'm getting free visits. But they're not if they
how,
don't do what they're doing. But if they do what they're doing, they'll never use the free visits. That's
I
the
was going to
point.
say, but how are you gonna sell that? You've got 30 boxes down with traps in,
Yeah.
okay, and you're going to
Oh,
pay
you're going.
£1,000. You're going to pay £1,000 a year for that. But if you get a rat problem, we're going to charge you extra unless they stick their head in the trap.
I mean, in that particular instance that you're talking about there, that's obviously a very different to what I was saying because like that's
Yes, of
apples and
course.
oranges.
Yeah.
But it's here is the cost for a trap only program. Here is a cost for a baiting program. Here is a cost for a hybrid model. Here is a cost for a low impact, low environmental impact routine, because I'm going to use cholecalciferol and X, Y, and Z. So with that, we've got all kinds of sort of like you can play anything. Like I'd love to get one of these companies on, and I'm sure we all know what the company we're talking about because their surveyors are excellent at
Oh yeah.
generating these contracts. I mean, masters of negotiation, guile, and beguilement at the end of the day. Fair play to them. It's what they do. And if people can't ring around the houses and get an idea of what good looks like, then
Well,
nobody's forced
I've
them
done
to
the
do it.
sales course, so I know how good it is.
Exactly that. I think we should have more of that in our industry. The subtle art of negotiation is lost when it's a race to the bottom. Let's be fair.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
But there we go.
Definitely.
Anyway,
Anyway, don't know
what
where that came in.
I don't know.
From them.
I'm just going to get off my high horse now. So there we go. And on with the
So,
show.
hands across the ocean again today. So,
Yes.
um, tonight we are welcoming back Niamh Quinn from who is in America again. So it's been 18 months. So we're going to see what
We
she's
haven't
been
been
up to.
doing this for 18 months. That's daft.
We are suddenly on in 3 episodes time. We are on number 150.
Oh.
So
Right. So, just out of interest, in the comments, just before we bring our very special guest on, how long have you, if you're in the comments, just mention how long you've been listening. Have you heard us from the very beginning, or have you only chimed in the last 3? No judgment, but if you've been with us from the very beginning, what's wrong with you? What
How did you put up with it?
How do you put up with it? As someone
Have
that,
we
you know,
improved or have we gone downhill?
no, I don't need that level of
That was
feedback
a stupid
today.
thing to say, wasn't it?
It
Yeah.
was, wasn't it? I don't
Right.
need that. Seen
Here we
everyone's
go.
well done. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm from America, but I'm obviously with this noise that comes out, it's not technically from America.
What are you saying? Is that not how all Americans sound? I don't understand.
Only when I go home and everyone's like, "Oh, you have an American twang," and then the Americans are like, "What the hell is this one saying?"
Excellent. Oh, it's been a hot minute since we've had you on. I think last time we were speaking all about some of the field trials you've been doing around. It was shaving rats and, you know, giving them haircuts. I think was the last time we spoke. So if
Yeah,
anyone,
yeah, we
sorry,
were giving them some very nice manicured backsides that didn't work out very well for us in the end.
Oh,
did
did
it
it
not? Because
not?
you're only halfway through the study when we spoke last time, or you're coming to the end of it. So we'll have to have a bit of a recap. But before we recap on the study, just for everyone listening who's just tuned in, and, you know, those who haven't seen you since the last one, introduce yourself. Tell us where you are, what you're doing, where you come from, and why we brought you back, basically.
Well, like you said, my name is Niamh Quinn. I'm a human wildlife interactions advisor with the University of California's Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I'm based in Irvine in Southern California. So I cover LA County, Orange County, and San Diego County. So, you know, bloody millions of peoples and millions of human and wildlife conflicts. And I could have studied anything I want, I guess, but I'm really mostly just about rats. And here we have Rattus rattus, black rat, ship rat, whatever you guys call it. We call it the roof rat here. But we do have also Norway rats here, the brown rat. But in my county that I'm based in, we actually only have one population of Norway rats that we know of. And it's in a material transfer station. That's absolutely disgusting, those places. I mean, it's disgusting and wonderful all at the same time. Like, it's a great place to be if you want rats. But yeah, we've even caught fancy rats in that material transfer station, which is pretty interesting.
I was about to say, so of course there are Facebook forums all over the place, you know, for pest control and the rest of it. And one the other day, and I think it was an American one, but it may have been a British one, someone put a picture up of this beautiful piebald rat that they had caught in a snap trap. And someone's like, look at this, isn't this amazing? And you could see its little dumpy ears on it, and you're like, 100%, that did not come from the wild. That is not some genetic throwback. There is someone somewhere looking for that rat. So
Yeah, but it's kind of incredible that there's fancy rats in the area where we know there are only Norway rats. Like how did that, like, where did it come from? How did it happen? Is like, I mean, it's just interesting to think about. And I mean, I know we can do the like, you know, we could do the genetics if we really wanted to. There was a case recently where they found like a wood rat or a pack rat. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with that kind of species, like a native rodent species to North America. And they found it on like one of the atolls, Wake or Palmyra, or one of these atolls that's way out in the middle of nowhere, anywhere. And they were able to, like, by using its genetics, track it to the Air Force base that it came from in New Mexico. And so they know, I mean, it's insane, right? Yeah.
sorry, it's done to me for that. You'd have to have a reference. Like, so not only are they got the genetic material from that, they'd have to have a reference point from there. So it's
Yeah.
just blind luck that they had already started doing genetic sampling from.
Yeah, and they probably also had a good idea of like what military bases and stuff were accessing the island. But like from a biosecurity perspective, it's amazing because obviously then you can stop or try and not repeat what has happened before, because obviously introducing another invasive species into a very sensitive environment is obviously, I mean, doing it in the first place was a big mistake, but it's incredible. I mean, I would love to have better molecular skills, because I feel like for for pest management, there's a lot of different things that you can a lot of questions that we are unanswered that we could use molecular and DNA and genetics and stuff to answer.
Yeah. So there's two things that might really interest you, three maybe, but two. So number one, you're like gentleman from Southern Ireland, forgetting his name, but he's doing some work for us at the moment through the RRAG and Crew Island groups. But he did a resistance study of Southern Ireland, and Anthony, yes, that's it.
Of course I know Anthony. All Irish people know each other.
Yeah, isn't it? At the end of the day, you just have a secret network. There's a handshake. Yeah, but with that, he did some, and you've probably seen it, where he did sort of like all of the, he found all of the samples, but he also was able to put them through a microsatellite analysis as well to see how related they were to one another. So not only did he do sort of like, he looked at, I think it was either 300 or 600 rats, I can't remember, across Southern Ireland, and found like 3 of them had resistance, which was boggling, to be fair, considering how much resistance we have in the UK. But with that, he found then that sort of like some of the, like he managed to find that there was a museum out on one of the islands had some stuffed rats, and he's like, can I take a little sample of these? So he got sort of like a genetic record of like the oldest rats in Southern Ireland that had been, you know, from 200 years ago. And he actually found that some of the populations that he was sampling were direct descendants of this sort of like lineage of rats from this sort of like preserved museum sample. It's absolutely nuts. So that's number one. And number two, there was another great study in France, where they did a transect, and they found that actually rats are highly related to one another. So when you get resistance moving in, and you'd think that the rats that follow in afterwards, which are susceptible, would be unrelated to them, actually, like there's a huge level of cross linkage in a lot of rat populations. They're very happy to swap and share genetic material between populations.
Yeah, well, kind of on that same resistance train, I mean, I could tell you how we got involved, like with Anthony, because it's funny, because a colleague of mine from the National Wildlife Research Center in Colorado was over at the European Vertebrate Wildlife Meeting, presenting on our resistance works on roof rat, black rat, ship rat, here in California. And she was like, oh, well, I found this person, and they're a grad student, and they have like not time, but at least energy, maybe, and they could help us with the additional samples that we didn't have funding for. And it was funny, she like connected us. We were talking we were having a Teams meeting, and she pulled up the email, and first of all, she told me the guy was from Scotland, and I saw that his name was Anthony Murphy, and I was like, oh Jesus, here we go. And she's like, oh, you might know his supervisor here, Denise O'Mara. I was like, yes, I know Denise also. I was like, I don't know Anthony, but I did know Denise. And so we collaborated with the institution that Anthony is with, and the supervisor, Denise O'Mara, and we're still waiting for some results. Denise created a small human, so it's hard to get things done, and so we're just waiting there to find out what the story was. But interestingly enough, when we were doing our own resistance work here, because there's almost no resistance information on there's limited resistance information in general in the US, but there was hardly anything on Rattus rattus. And so we wanted to find out, and we did a very small pilot study, and we found the Y25F mutation, which kind of codes for resistance in at least bromadiolone, but maybe other second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. And we expanded that study to like more sites in Northern California, kind of more Central California, to look in more agricultural areas. And it's really interesting because we were finding like what we call like homozygous mutants. So like they have like a pair of resistance genes from both parents, right? Which means that the likelihood of resistance is fairly high. Now, we haven't tested for functional resistance yet. That's on the cards. That's coming up fairly shortly now. That's kind of the next thing we're going to do in the next actually couple of weeks. And what was interesting is that we our model rats, right, that we were kind of matching our genetic information to, actually came from France. And there's a lot of, as you guys probably know, there's a lot of resistance work done in France. And so we got them from Virginie Letard. I'm not actually sure what institution Virginie is with, but we accidentally included 2 rats from Portland, which is, for your listeners that are not totally familiar with the geography, it's in the Pacific Northwest. So same coastline as California, but not in California. And this was California state money. And so I wasn't really supposed to be spending it on things that were, but 2 of these samples kind of accidentally got shipped to our collaborators, and they don't know that they don't know, they just get a number, right? They don't know the metadata. They generally don't see it. And what was really interesting is that so first of all, the 2 rats that got sent from Portland, both homozygote resistant roof rats, and one of them was genetically identical, essentially, to the rat in the resistant rat in France. Right?
Oh.
Right. And so you're like, where did that come from? How did it get
France.
there? Well, yeah, it looks like it did come from France. But like, if you think of like where Portland is on the west coast of the United States and where France is, and how it would even have to like sail around the world to get here, or did it fly on a plane?
Just for our listeners, because we don't generally get black rats in the UK. So the only time that I've ever dealt with them, we used alpha chlorolose fruit. So how do you guys deal with black rats? Because I bet everybody listening, there's probably 1 or 2 people listening that has ever even dealt with a black rat issue.
So black rats on the West Coast are essentially king, right? They're everywhere. Like they're the suburban rat. And I always think as well, like the rat pressure in California blows my mind, because like when I think of like my experiences from growing up in Ireland and the amount of times I've like actually physically seen rats, right? And even as a wildlife biologist in Ireland, when I was doing my PhD, like I caught 1 rat once. Now, granted, I was working in woodlands. You wouldn't expect to catch that many Norway rats, but like they are present in those areas. And when I caught it in a Longworth trap too, and I picked it up and I was like, what the feck is this thing in here? You could just feel it was just so heavy. And I was trapping for pygmy shrews. So like, you know, this tip like this, right? And like the cutest, like literally the cutest, most fiercest animal in the world nearly, right? Tries to mow you down but can't even break your skin. And so for black rats here, it's kind of interesting that you guys were talking about the sales model, and I was kind of laughing about that, because like we don't do anything really different, I don't think, here for Norway rats and for black rats. I think it's like the pest management model is you put your boxes out, you put them every so many feet, and you put whatever bait you think is the best. And in California, we're very, very restricted on our choices. And right now there is a moratorium on the use of second gen and first generation anticoagulant rodenticide. So that means that the active ingredients that we have is bromethylene, which you guys don't have, right? You guys don't have bromethylene, and we have cholecalciferol. So that's it. We have those 2 things. And then obviously we have traps and stuff, but people aren't really like, it's too expensive, right? It's expensive. It's like, you know, people don't want their traps checked more than once a month. And so that's really, and like, it's all done in bait stations. It's all done on the ground, which is interesting because like, you know, they're like, you know, we always talk about black rats being kind of more arboreal and off the ground, but to be fair, we always see them at bait stations too. So they definitely forage on the ground.
So it's a bit like when I did my training all that time ago, you know, it was like black rat issue. If you ever get a black rat issue, they're going to only eat fruit, and you're going to have to use alpha chlorolose on fruit. You wouldn't use a second generation anticoagulant, you know, because they're going to be up in the roof and they're not going to come down and take anything. So it's completely different than that. Then that's not.
So I think that there's limited information on how to actually properly manage urban rats in general. And I don't mean just roof rats, right? I think that we don't know enough about their behavior, and we don't know enough about their populations, and then we don't know enough about where they are, and then where like you guys are managing as pest management professionals. And I always say that like we have a lot of black rats in agriculture in California, a lot, right? If you saw how many rats that we caught in lemon orchards in California, you would never enjoy another gin and tonic in your whole entire life. Like, it's disgusting. Like, absolutely
Thanks
just
for that.
disgusting.
I thought that's what gave it the flavour, to be fair.
Yeah, like that's what makes it a tiny bit bitter.
A real kick. Giving rat ass is a whole new meaning, but there we go.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, there's just so like we could have like 50% trap success in some of those orchards. And right now there's kind of a quote unquote rat apocalypse in California fruit and nut crops in the Central Valley. It's hard to know how much of it I shouldn't get myself in trouble here, but here we go now. Started, can't finish, or have to finish. But it's like the issue has been, I started my career in California fruit and nut crops managing roof rats in California like 15 years ago, right? And so they were there, and they were there in numbers, but it's not just, they don't just damage the fruit, they damage or the nuts, they damage trees, they damage the they chew the irrigation lines, and then
Do they climb the trees for the fruit?
Oh, absolutely. They 100% climb the trees, and they do put the bait stations in the trees in agriculture, and they have very, very successful control using first generation anticoagulant rodenticides, usually difascinone, but sometimes also chlorofascinone, but it seems like difascinone actually for some reason is working better. At least that's what our experiments have shown. And they have really, really good control, and you can kind of control on an orchard by orchard block. But when you think of an orchard and you think of like an urban application, right? An orchard, you can have rodenticide all over the place. But with an urban environment, you've got a little bit here and some here, and like this house, but you don't have this house. And then there's a business here and you don't have here, but then there's a park here and you don't control here. And that's kind of the situation here. And roof rats are everywhere. So like there's roof rats in everybody's backyard. Like it's unusual for us to go in and do research in an urban or suburban backyard and not find rats. Like the roof rat pressure is incredible. But base stations are always on the ground, always. And we've actually looked at above ground and on ground placements to see if there's any difference, and there is no difference. Now, obviously, you could say that there's some benefits to having it off ground, because from our research, we were able to show that like there was less kind of interaction of non-targets, or at least we were detecting non-targets less around the box. But in general, we didn't even have that many non-targets going into the box, if that makes sense, right? So like we were detecting the non-targets around the box, but in general, between low and high, the rate of egress into the boxes was fairly low anyway.
So when you're mentioning non-targets, I mean, what are we talking about here? Are we talking like small parasite birds or small mammals or?
So we have, I mean, it's like the thing about urban Southern California is that there used to be a mountain lion in urban Southern California. So like we have everything from native mammals. So I always think like our deer mouse and your wood mouse are kind of fairly similar, except here you often get communities like, and I don't know what it's like in the UK, and we don't have any woodland really in Ireland anymore, but like the communities are almost plonked down into the middle of these natural areas now, and they keep huge swaths in between the homes of all these natural areas. So we actually get we are getting more of these native rodents. So our native mice and our native rats could go into the boxes, and in general they're not on any of our rodenticide labels. And then we have tree squirrels, some of them which have been gifts from America to England. But then ye feckers gave them to Ireland too, so we had no love lost there.
So you said about the mountain lion, and that's that was the one that was poisoned, and that's why you lost escars, wasn't it?
P22. So P22 was exposed and had been exposed like pretty much any time they ever interacted with it to pretty much nearly every active ingredient that was out there. And it was a kind of a driving force, I would say, that, and the fact that they were also trying to link exposure to rodenticide and mange. If you guys know what mange is?
Yeah,
mange, to in wildlife to anticoagulant rodenticides as well. So those were the two kind of big, I would say, drivers, and the fact that there was a lot of wildlife in general exposed to anticoagulant rodenticides.
So you went from using anticoagulants to a really, really nasty substance like bromethylene. How has that gone? How's that
Well,
gone down?
funny enough, there's detections of bromethalin up the food chain now also, right? Which is really
Surprise, surprise.
interesting. And so there's people at Tufts University, which is kind of northeastern United States, and they've done a lot. Well, I mean, a lot of people are doing a lot of research on bromethalin now, but they're finding bromethalin in birds of prey. And like, we know that like if they're finding it in birds of prey, like here in Southern California where we have coyotes, right? Coyotes eat anything, and so like they could have eaten a block, right? A waxy block or a soft bait or whatever. But like birds of prey don't do that. Like birds of prey are getting it from another source, like a mammalian source, or like maybe even not a mammalian source, like obviously like another bird or whatever. But like they're not just eating it off the ground. So it looks like there is secondary exposure. Now, is there secondary impacts? Hard to know, right? Exposure doesn't mean death. Exposure doesn't even mean sublethal effects. And so we don't know. And then, you know, the other active ingredient that's left, cholecalciferol, not the easiest thing to find when you're looking for it. Like the way most people, like most wildlife biologists like myself, look for it is by looking for the presence of vitamin D3. And we have found vitamin D3 in our rodenticide work that we're doing in coyotes, but I couldn't tell you if it's cholecalciferol or not. Because vitamin D3 is naturally occurring. We don't know if they're getting it from food or from bait or where it's coming from. So we haven't even published that data because I have no idea what it means.
Exactly, and I mean, cholecalciferol is the version that's produced by man. Then there's ergocalciferol, which is very similar. You know, it's produced by fungus at that point. But realistically, as soon as it gets into any kind of like vertebrate body, it almost instantly breaks down to caldol and calcifol, caldol and calcifol. So when you're looking for residues of cholecalciferol, are you actually looking for cholecalciferol? Or are you looking for its metabolites as a result of that? Because you're finding cholecalciferol, it's not gone through a body because it should have metabolized out.
Yeah. So we have, like I said, we have vitamin D3, and I just don't know. I don't know if it means anything. I definitely don't know what it means. Like I'm always fairly wary about having opinions about these things because our toolbox in Southern California is already significantly restricted, and I don't really want there to be any less tools in the toolbox.
And so then all of these boxes that everybody's got in their backyards and everything, they've only got bromethalin in, have they?
Bromethalin or cholecalciferol. And some of them will have traps too, but most of them will have either bromethalin or cholecalciferol.
That's isn't that quite a toxicity problem because neither of those have got antidotes, have they?
Yeah, so I think like you have to be very, very careful about, like I'm not the biggest fan of urban residential use of bait stations for bait. I just don't think, because of the range of the rats themselves, especially roof rats, that it doesn't really make sense, to be honest with you, because you're not really hitting even half or even an eighth maybe of their home range in your backyard.
What is their home range then over there?
Depends.
What would you say?
It just depends. Like we have data where we have, you know, rats that are crossing streets. We have rats that are, you know, going over like 9-10 like urban residential backyards. The figure off the top of my head, I'd have to go back in and look at it for you, but it depends. Like we've got rats that look like they're have fair affinity for one site. So like in school sites, for example, they're like staying within the bounds of the schools. But in other school sites, they're crossing over the street into other commercial sites. And so like when you think of like, and in our kind of urban residential settings where we have data, the rats are just everywhere. Like there's just so many of them, and they're in so many different sites. So like I think to properly control that, you would need bait stations in every single backyard, which is also a very big toxicity issue, because now you've got like tons and tons of pesticide that I don't even know if it's going to work that well. But obviously you've got your other non-targets, your kids, your dogs. And I think a lot of the time the accidents here, and I don't know for sure because like I'm in the research world, I'm not in like the actual I do apply pesticides when we do experiments, but when like, I think a lot of it comes from like technician error. And I know there's probably a lot of technicians listening to you right now. So I'm not saying that technicians make errors all the time. I just think that there are technicians that don't really understand that, like, having an unsupervised container that's not properly secured can be really like a really bad thing. I even know a salesperson whose dog got into the back of the truck and got into some stuff, and like, they should know better. You should just, I mean, we do know better, and the majority of us know better. And I think the things that we hear and the things that make it up to the kind of the legislator or even the regulators here in California often are just like the less than the 1% of technicians too. But yeah, we do get a lot of dog exposures to those compounds, and there's decontamination, right? But there's no antidote. But the thing about anticoagulant rodenticides is as well is that even though there is an antidote, like once the dog reaches a certain point, that antidote's not going to work. And I think that's really important for technicians to know, that it's not a reason to use it either, is that you know that there's an antidote, because you have to know that the dog got exposed when it got exposed, make sure it gets treated pretty quickly. And then obviously the treatment is for the vitamin K1 vitamin. Do you hear me? I'm turning into my American alter ego here. The vitamin K1 antidote has to be administered over, like, I think it's a number of weeks. So yeah, it's not a silver bullet. I mean, it definitely helps, don't get me wrong, but you have to make sure, like, once your dog becomes symptomatic of anticoagulant exposure, it could be too late for the antidote to work.
Just for everybody again listening, if I remember rightly, black rats do not show neophobic reaction, do they?
Oh, they fucking hate bait stations. Can I say that? Whoops.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Oh no, they absolutely do. Like, that's one of the things that was really interesting for us when we started looking to see like what kind of non-targets were accessing bait stations. We were so surprised at like the black rats. They just, like, in like so many sites, like they were engaging with the bait stations. We call it discovery right now. Discovery is kind of a little bit subjective, right? Like the rat and the bait stations were essentially in the same place.
I've discovered it.
I know, yeah. You
Eureka!
Like, put their little finger up and go, oh, bait station. But they weren't going in. Now, that's another application that we'd love to do with genetics. Like, we'd love to see like which rats in a population are actually accessing the boxes, because with cameras, all we can see is that either some parts of the population are accessing it, or no part of the population is accessing it. And so, like, is the box in the wrong place? Is it like, is there something about where we put it, where we haven't put it, that we like, that we could improve? That's something that we'd love to do. But they're 100%, they're either, and I don't think that neophobia is the right thing to say. I don't think they're afraid of it. I think they give a shit. Like, I really do. I think the rats, because they're all over the box, like they're all over it. They'll be on top of it. They'll be at the side of it. They'll like, they'll eat on top of it, but they like trying to get them to go in is so difficult. But I imagine you guys have that issue with Nori rats too.
Yeah. So I literally gave a talk at PestX 2 weeks ago on thinking outside the box and rodent interactions with bait boxes. And one of the things that brought up in that is we overuse the term neophobia. It's a catch-all, but actually it's a collection of various behaviors that we up against. You've got spatial neophobia, which manifests itself in their movements, their rat runs, their habitual movements. You've got object neophobia, which is what we traditionally ascribe to boxes and traps. And then you have food neophobia, which is this habitualization onto certain feeds and foodstuffs. And all three of those together is what we see when they interact or don't interact with boxes. But to say neophobia as a catch-all is, I don't know, a little erroneous, because as you say, they can sit on top of the box. They're obviously not afraid of the box, but something is moderating their behavior to not go and engage with that food or that lure within the box. So
sorry, I was going to say that's a good question down there, but going off the neophobia thing quickly, when you catch the black rats, do you ever see the other black rats eating the other ones, cannibalistic? Funny enough, because we caught one on camera, a Norway rat, obviously, on camera this week, and he's taken a great big chunk out of his mate because his mate's come in the trap, and he's literally dragged a black cat trap and the rat that's in it. He's dragging it along as if to say, come on, I'm going to take you with me.
I'll never forget one of my students once showing me a picture of like a big roof rat, which is a much smaller roof rat in its mouth, and she's like, I just hope he was out too late and his dad is kicking his ass and dragging him home. And I was like, that's not what's happening.
No,
and I can't remember if we talked about it the last time, but like a lot of our work has been like looking at ways to increase engagement with bait stations, and like we did a few different things. One of the things that we were really interested in is almost this idea of pre-baiting, although pre-baiting is not a good word for it because it's not technically pre-baiting, but the idea of providing like the non-toxic matrix outside the bait station, and if that increases engagement in like with the bait station itself. And we found that now we're a little bit constrained sometimes because of our ethical approval. So like for this one, we had non-toxic bait inside and non-toxic bait outside the box, right? So because our what we call our IACUC, our Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, sometimes they won't let us use rodenticide bait, which is absolutely ridiculous because it's been used like by technicians all over the world every single day. And so anyway, so we did this experiment. And we were interested to see, like, could we increase the time to entry? So, like, are the rats going to go in quicker? And could we increase consumption when they're inside the box? And we actually did both. So by we used, we have a product here, and I don't know if you guys have it here. It's called Leafatech No Tox. Do you guys see that? Do you guys have something like that?
We've got various non-toxic baits.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's basically like almost like their rodenticide without the rodenticide, right? It's like the soft bait packages. So we use that, we put it outside the bait station. It decreased the time to entry. So the rats were going in faster and they were eating more inside the bait station. Now I wouldn't expect to see that with a toxic bait, because obviously the more they eat, the less they eat. Does that make sense? Like the more, like, it's hard to show increase in bait consumption when the thing you're eating kills you, right? And so recently we did a trial with BASF, and we were also interested, like, if we use toxic bait inside and we did the sprinkles outside, would we see a similar effect? And interestingly enough, it did not increase bait consumption, and it also did not decrease time to entry. But what it did do is, in sites where we had this kind of pre-bait or prime, we were calling it like a prime outside the bait station, the chances of having consumption in your bait stations were significantly higher. So the sites that had the prime essentially had more likelihood to have ingress like into the bait station, and you would think feeding, but that's not the way it turned out. But it's definitely helping them get into the box. Now, how they engage with the bait once they're in the box, we couldn't answer that, and we would love to be able to answer that. But it's difficult when you use toxic bait as well, because it's hard to measure its success when, like, the more they die, the less they eat, right? And so I think that this kind of supplementary bait thing has something to it. The problem with supplementary bait is that now we're encouraging technicians to sprinkle stuff outside bait stations that looks really like things that could kill the rodents that we're trying to manage. And so I don't know, people are a bit nervous about recommending it, but it does. I mean, we've got tons of replicates. It's worked now twice, once without toxic bait and one with toxic bait. And I think if we were to replicate it again, we would see similar increased successes. And maybe the successes are not looking exactly the same, but it was insane to me to think that we have, like, the same technique was having kind of a different effect, but also the similar effect at the same time, where we knew we were getting, like, they were going in quicker and they were eating more. And then when you look at the toxic bait, the chances of them going in increased when you used it outside the bait station.
It would be Really interesting to see, because as you say, you're calling it priming. I'd call it like pre-qualifying or something like that. But with that, does that pre-qualify, does that primer have to be immediately juxtaposed next to the box? You know, Hansel and Gretel, breadcrumbs, here we go. Or potentially, is it just habituating those animals onto the bait? So could you put it down, let's say, a brown rat burrow, 5-6 feet away, put it down the burrow, get them to consume it in the burrow, and then would they be more likely to enter the box having, you know, associated A to B? Is there a minimum distance? Do you have to, you know, go like Salt Bay on it, or could you just, you know, yeah, whoop, or could you actually sort of like get them to eat it elsewhere to then encourage them to sort of like engage with that placement by memory?
Yeah, and
That's
it's hard to know if the sprinkles have an effect on the bait or the box, right? You know what I
yeah, that's
mean?
what I'm
So
saying,
like
yeah.
it's hard for us to know that. But like I think certainly it's worth looking into more, and I think it's definitely a tool that people should be using, because we've all been using pre-baiting for trapping for forever. And so I don't know why now. There's we also tried the switch, right, where we put the pre-Lantra in first and then we use the cilantro afterwards, and we didn't see any difference there. But so it's hard. It's, you know, you have to get them into the bait station. Like that's the one thing that I think is really important. Now, what they do in the bait station is totally different thing, but they're not going to do anything into the bait station if it's not there, if they don't go in the first place. Like you have to get the butts in the seats essentially, before you turn on the TV.
Have you
Oh, sorry,
noticed
Jackie.
any difference in different types of bait stations?
That's what I was
So
going to say.
we looked at we paired 3 different bait stations right together. Now we didn't do the sprinkles, because you know, when you add too many things, you kind of dilute your power of your experiment. And so in this experiment, we looked at 3 different bait stations. And I think it's you know, we have the West Coast Rodent Academy here at the office, and we take 90 technicians, like twice, the 45 technicians twice a year. And actually not even just technicians. Sometimes they're you know, sometimes they work at schools, sometimes they're like, you know, they work in parks, sometimes they're municipal managers, but they're all basically managers of rats. Recently with someone that owned a restaurant that attended, which is a little worrying, but also very nice that these people are like, they really want to learn. So I thought that was great. But anyways, so at the West Coast Rodent Academy, I always ask people, what bait station do you use and why? And it's a really interesting question. Alex, your camera's making me laugh. It's a really interesting bait station, or it's a really interesting question to ask, because almost everybody's going to tell you cost. That's why they're using the bait stations that they picked. Almost everybody. Or it's some people are going to be like, I don't know why, my boss makes that decision, and the boss makes the decision essentially usually based on cost, right? And so I think that a lot of the bait stations that we have here in the US, a lot of the what I would call conventional design bait stations, look the same, right? I don't know if there's that much difference in them. So we picked something that was what we called conventional design, and people were like, well, how do you pick those things? Well, I pick things that people give me for free. And so we use a VM bait stations. Do you guys have VM in the UK? No.
No, but that might just be a trade name thing. Let me just look it up, because we may have it under another name.
Yeah, so we used a VM, like Easy Clean or Easy something. And it's just a normal, like, you know, they go in, they turn the corner, and the bait's on the same end as where the rat enters the bait station. Does that make sense? Right? It goes in, it turns, and then it comes back in. So the bait's at the back,
Yeah.
the holes are at
Yeah.
the back, and it has to go like that, basically.
Yeah.
In. Now I know you have the other ones, which are the like the kind of the through and through, okay, and they look the same, but the through and through is different, obviously. And so we tried that one, and I don't know, Alex, can you show a picture of it, or can we not show products, or I don't know, but anyway, I mean, if it's not,
but I can't find necessarily the one you're looking for.
oh,
But very
okay.
quickly,
Anyways,
yeah.
yes, but that's what they look like. And we tried a rock bait station. Do you guys have any of those in the UK?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we tried a rock bait station, and then we also used something, and so that was from JT Eaton. The other one was from VM, and then we used one from Kness. Do you guys have that company in the UK? Yeah. And it was called the Snappy Trap Cover. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
Right. And so it has baffles. So technically you can use it as a bait station as well. And the reason we picked that one is because we've been doing a lot of, we've been using a lot of what we call tracking tunnels to monitor rat activities. And so these things are really, really common in like New Zealand, like the islands that are using a lot of eradication. And what they have is they have the ink card in the middle, or the ink cards in the middle, and they have like a white card on either end, and the rat runs in, and it's just a long cardboard tube. And the rats were engaging with these really, really readily. That's exactly what we used.
There we go. So for anyone looking at it, so the bait station that I used, sorry, like lots of people listen back, so I'm just going to do my sort of like audio description right now.
Oh, okay.
Standard bait station, it's a through and through tunnel with a dog leg going back into probably 2 bait hoppers at the front, back opening. So it's very similar
very
to
thin though, isn't it?
Very thin with this. So
in
probably
height,
similar to your AF Atoms or your Rogard Rotec boxes from One EMV. Slightly different shape, but slightly probably a lower profile with that as well. But there we go. So yeah, just very quickly with these, I found that when we do, you can see my little mouse clicking about on this, but when you were using these, I found when I was doing the field trials, that if the rodent was coming in from, let's say, the right side, it would be the left side hopper that always got emptied first, and vice versa, because the rats, despite the fact they're big enough to move around in there, categorically hate having to turn back on themselves. So if you're putting blocks or something in there, then it behooves you to put it on the opposite side to where you think they're going to be coming in. Did you find anything similar to that?
The bait, Alex, is actually on the back. You see where that Easy Secure logo is? The bait is actually on the back there. So like the rat comes in at the back and goes up the dog leg and round back to where the Easy Secure is. At the back.
So they come in the front and they dog leg around the front first and then go to the back. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's what most of the bait stations in the US look like. And now they don't all have that cement block on the outside, right? Some of them have it on the inside. That's the only one I know that has it on the outside. There's some that have, that just have the standard. You can do the standard like duckbill anchor. Is that what you guys call them in the UK? Where you put like a wire with like a little knobbly thing on the end.
We don't call them duckbills, but we just call them sort of like the fixers at the back. It's interesting though that you say that so the conventional wisdom in the UK is that rodents like to see through and through. They like to be able to see from one side to the other, so there's no chance of there's a chance of escape. There's no chance of being blocked into that tunnel. But you're saying that most of your boxes in the US have the dog leg first, so there's no that rat can't see through and through. Do you not think that then sort of like detracts from
it absolutely 100% could. And what's interesting is that like we know it takes them a second to get from one end to the other. Now we don't do this very, very often because like when we look at our rats, obviously I have to see it go in and see it go out to know this. It can just take a second for it to boop, boop, boop. So but it has to come in and go like that and then go back out and around. Like, so like if this, like just say my head is the bait station is up like this, right? It goes in like that, right? It has to go around and down in like this to get at the bait. And so it could be, and so we have a big grant up for review at the minute where realistically what we've proposed is to build a better bait station. And we don't really know what that looks like. It could be so many different things. It could be material. It could be the size of the hole. It could be the profile of the bait station. It could be right. It could be the through and through. It could be, right. There's research out there that says they prefer wood. And I remember like the last time I was on talking to Sean, he was talking about how like the rats like to go up the bottom of the bait station and make their own hole. And like that always kind of really stuck with me. Like there's just so many things out there, and like and I don't know if one box is enough, right? I don't know. And like it's interesting to me that another question I asked at Rodent Academy is how many bait stations do you have on the back of your truck, right? And I don't mean like how many individual bait stations, I mean how many different types of bait stations do you have on the back of your truck? And they'll all say one.
So we have the other thought also that rats like to sit on their hind legs, don't they, to eat? So a lot of bait stations, like that one's very thin, low profile, flat, whereas some of them sort of almost have like a dome So the area where they can
Yeah.
feed, they can sit up and have a
Yeah.
mess. And we've also got over here, we've got other bait stations that don't have floors at the front.
Yeah.
So the run through bit as such has no has no floor to it.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
you don't get that, you know, initial like stepping in onto plastic. They are actually on a familiar surface until they actually go in to eat.
And we have tried like textured inserts as well, and we didn't see any effect. I think it's worth looking at. And like the original like rodent hotels or whatever they were called, they had an upstairs, I believe. So like the downstairs was kind of like kind of like this, but like more like on the ground, and then the rat had to go up into it to get the bait. And which is really interesting. There's a really great paper written by a colleague of mine from UCLA on the history of bait stations. And it's incredible to see, like, it's not just, and I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in the US, I feel like it just, like, we've just evolved to like, what's the cheapest? How quick can we put it out? And like, you just every 15 feet, there's a box in whatever you're managing. And there's no real thought about, does the box work? Are we even doing anything, right? Like, I mean, what's a rat problem? Like, do you see rats? Do you not have rats? Are rats there? Like, if there's no bait consumption, does that mean that you fix the problem? Well, if the rats aren't going into the box, they're not going to eat the bait. So how do you even know you're doing anything?
I think, to be honest, ours is quite a lot simpler than that. The evolving bait station, in the fact that 30 years ago, all you ever had, the best thing you had was a little plastic tube that was about that long with 2 little feet on it. And you were lucky if you got half a dozen of those. And then a company came up with this plastic box and realized that they could sell hundreds and thousands of them. And that was the reason. It wasn't anything to do with, you know, is it effective or no? It's just, we can sell this as a first line defense against rodent intrusion. And that was the taking off of it. And it wasn't anything to do with, is it any better? Is it any worse? It's just like, we can sell thousands of these things. And that's how it's progressed from there, really.
And a lot of the greatest bait station research has come out of the UK. And is it Roger Key? I don't know how you say it.
There's a couple of papers. I think the one you referred to before was a paper by Buckle et al., and which said that sort of like rodent, using alternative materials, wood, for example, or rubber, was, you had 70% more likely to have engagement with rodents than you would using a plastic standard TRB. There's another great paper, I'm trying to find it, came out of Pakistan, which looked at like 100 different bait stations and analyzed the factors which made them most effective. So I'll send that on to you, because that's probably exactly up your street right now.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I feel like the bit, like, we can't apply a rodenticide just out there. We know that we have to protect it in some way from like non-targets and people, and apply it responsibly. And I think that, like, we still know it gets out. Like, it doesn't, like, I mean, if like here in the Southern California, like, you could apply it to the letter of the law, and like, if a rodent eats it and then something else eats that rodent, you're gonna get it, like, exposure up the food chain. But like, I think that the key to fixing exposure is, like, we're so focused on so far up the food chain. If we had less rats, we'd have less exposure, because there'd be nothing to eat those rats. And so I think that that's kind of like our EPA, like our Environmental Protection Agency, like, they're so focused on like non-targets, and that's not really the problem. At least here in California, the problem is the target pest, right? The target pest gets in and things eat the target pest. But if there were less target pests to kill, we would have less exposure up the food chain. And so to do that, we need to apply, I'm not saying necessarily more rodenticide, but we need to apply our tools more efficiently and practically. Like, it has to be practical for the industry, because they are an industry and they need to make money. Like, that's the whole point, right? But we need to protect public health. We need to make sure that there's no thing, and we need to, like I said, send the rats to Jesus. Like, we have to kill rats. And if you kill, because if you're going in to a contract, right, and you're dropping you kind of have this like like ebb and flow, where like these peaks and troughs of rat populations, right? You come in, you knock them down, they grow back up. You come in, they knock them down, they grow back up, and they continue to kind of grow back up to the point where you started to manage them. Where like what you ideally want to do is knock them down and keep them down, so that kind of ebb and trough is very, very low down here. So instead of using all the rodenticide that you need to kill them like way up on the top of the peak down here, the peak is just much lower, right? And I realize that you've got many people listening here, so I'm trying to be descriptive as possible because they can't see my finger moving along the screen. But if we had like, if we could increase engagement with our tools, and so like that doesn't necessarily just mean rodenticide, right? That could be traps, it could be fertility tools, it could be everything. The problem is that the box that we keep them in is the huge problem. It's a massive, massive problem. And the research out there shows that it limits interaction with devices. It also reduces uptake of bait. And that's what we're using to manage our rodents out there. Like almost everybody that's not in an attic or, you know, like in a home that's trying to manage outdoor populations of rodents, they're using, well, you guys don't call them bait stations, right? You call them, what do you guys call them? You call them bait stations?
Bait station.
Yeah.
It's
So
me
why?
TRBs. Sorry.
So you said there's a bit of a rat apocalypse at the moment.
Yes.
So what's that attributed to?
So the rat apocalypse is occurring in the Central Valley, which is mainly an agricultural area in California. And like, I mean, when I say mainly, I'm talking about like, you know, you're talking about hundreds and thousands of acres of almonds, pistachios, every citrus you could think of under the planet. Like before I moved here, I thought there was tangerines and oranges. There definitely is not. There's like 50 different everything. There's like so many. You could have Lisbon lemons, and you can have this kind of lemon, and you can have navel oranges and caracara, and you can have this type of tangerine and this type of satsuma, and then the easy peel cuties. It just goes on and on. Like California's got the most incredible agriculture. But with that, you get rats. But what we have here is that it's very, very expensive to water anything in California. So like the growers are really, really struggling to make money because the cost of water and the cost of the production costs. And you guys know, like it's almost like I mean, I'm Irish. I always feel kind of sorry for the poor farmer. But like if you think about like when you go into Lidl and Adley and can buy a bag of carrots for 49p or cents or whatever it is, it just kind of like it takes way more than 49p to grow a single carrot, never mind a bag of carrots. It's kind of I think it's kind of disgusting actually, and it's really sad. But it's similar in California. A lot of it is directed to cost related to water, but obviously we have restrictions on all sorts of pesticides and there's just not rats in there, there's everything. And the thought is that there's like a lot of abandoned orchards now, and those are kind of like these kind of source populations for these rats that move into active orchards. There's also a little bit of research out there that show that, you know, rats are increasing in size and their numbers are increasing because of climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it. And so it could be that, and it could just be a perfect storm. You know, you get like these, like we know that throughout the world, right, we have these cycling rodent populations that are linked to weather. Like one of the ones that your listeners may be aware of is the mouse plagues in Australia, right? Very, very linked to weather, which causes like increased in like natural food crops and stuff. And so that could be happening here as well. But nobody cares about rats, right? Nobody's measuring them. Nobody's monitoring them. We don't really know what's happening. And to be fair, when I say nobody's measuring, nobody's monitoring, nobody cares, everybody cares now because the growers are complaining a lot. And like we do meet weekly with our state regulatory people and our, like the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and our, you know, our Pest Control Advisor Association. They're definitely not the size of cats, but they're on their roof rats, right? They're black rats. But they're everywhere and they're all over agriculture, which is obviously a huge food safety issue. But they're destroying so they do damage to the trees, which is like way more costly than the damage to the crop, right? Because these things come up every year. But they're also doing damage to like the harvesting equipment. Which like, I don't know if you've ever seen how almonds are harvested, but like it blows my mind. Like this massive thing comes in and it grabs onto the tree and it goes and like it just like the sound of all the almonds, and then they leave them on the ground, right? So they leave them on the ground and they kind of ripen on the ground. And then this big kind of Hoover comes up and like goes up the middle of the things and like sucks them all up. And so like there's loads and loads of food there for not just the black rats, but also our what we call Peromyscus maniculatus, which is our deer mouse, which is it looks so much like a wood mouse you wouldn't believe. When I did my PhD on wood mice, and when I first came here, like anytime I would have a picture of a deer mouse up, I just couldn't stop saying wood mouse because it looked so similar. It's similar kind of ecology as well. Similar-ish.
They're the ones that carry hantavirus, aren't they?
They are indeed, yes.
Yeah. Also,
so that's quite an issue, isn't it, really?
I mean, it's always kind of been an issue in the US and in certain parts of the US, what we call the Four Corners, which I think is like Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, that one. There's like 4 states that come together. And you always get like a lot of these diseases, you get them at higher altitudes as well. Certainly true with plague. Do we have plague here in Southern California? Or not plague, sorry. Well, we do have plague in Southern California, but do we have hantavirus here in Southern California? Yes. The chances of getting it are fairly low, but obviously once you get it, your survival rate is not the greatest. Now it's better than it used to be. They've gotten better at managing it. But you know,
wasn't that what Gene Hackman had? Or was that Guff?
I think it was his
wife.
His wife, was it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. One of them, I can.
Yeah, and
seem to remember having that.
and so like it happens, right? And it's and the newest kind of excitement here in Southern California is also rat lungworm. And so rat lungworm was first detected in I think it was like a pygmy falcon or something at the San Diego Zoo back in 2011, and nobody really thought about it. And what's funny is that in 2018, actually my work group here, we had a meeting on rat lungworm because we kind of figured it was coming anyway. And so the San Diego Zoo once again have found it in their population. They started to trap, and they actually trapped a lot of possums or opossums here. And they trapped like 13 possums across the county of San Diego. Not all of them very close to the zoo as well. And they found that like 7 out of 13 had evidence of meningitis, and then on further examination, 6 out of 7 of them were positive for rat lungworm. And so rat lungworm is, the chances of also getting rat lungworm are fairly low. And what's interesting is the detection rate in their rats was pretty low, and much lower than finding it in opossums. But opossums are a very urban animal here in Southern California. So,
Don't opossums just eat any old shit?
They do, but they eat a lot of invertebrates, and they eat a lot of like snugs and snails, which is the intermediate host of rat lungworm. But interestingly enough, we just did a diet study on black rats to see what they were eating in urban environments, and they also eat a ton of slugs invertebrates. We can't totally say that they're slugs and snails. We just know that it's invertebrates. So it would appear that it is likely that they're eating a lot of slugs and snails.
How is that rat lungworm getting over to humans then?
Well, in Hawaii, what happens is that they're teeny weeny little slugs, and people are eating the slugs on like unwashed, like lettuce, like, you know, the way, like, I mean, it happens to everybody every so often that you're like,
no,
you're like never salad, and you're like, what the
dirty lettuce.
Yeah, that's why I said don't eat salad. That's my health advice for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I don't have to eat that fluffy bunny shit ever again.
Oh, can you get it from eating fish?
Yeah.
I've just done a bit, like, while we were talking, just done a little bit of a search on this. That is probably one of the most convoluted parasitic relationships I've ever seen. There's about half a dozen intermediary hosts between A and B there. The parasitic lungworm is in the rats, but then it moves, oocysts in the digestive tract and the feces to invertebrates like slugs. Then it gets to people through fish or shrimp or unwashed produce. But this is the interesting bit, because the rat lungworm affects human beings, it would seem, not in our lungs, but in our brains and in our GI tracts.
Shit.
Yeah, that's not great, is it?
Is that what it's going to do? Is it? It's going to bury into our brain?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Shit, that's a good sales tool, that is.
So you have to come when you come and visit us in California. You just have to eat no less.
Well, I'll take one,
Wow.
and just for safety's sake, I'll stop eating lettuce. There we
Yeah.
go. That's
Wow.
amazing. Sorry, that's like I say, most parasitic relationships are relatively like straightforward or circular. That one is just crazy,
Yeah,
You can
just
just
all over
imagine.
the shop.
that paper was just released here in Southern California. We'd like to do a little bit more of a deep dive and see like what's happening in urban environments here in very urban Southern California, and we think we're going to target possums actually because the positivity rate is much higher and we're poor, and so we need bigger bang for our buck. I should have that like tattooed on me. I'm an academic and we're poor, but like we need to know, like it's a potential public health issue. I don't want to say it's a big public health issue because like the chances of people actually getting it are very low, but
How low?
I
Give us some figures.
don't know of its prevalence. Now it's fairly prevalent in Hawaii, and they also have it, I believe, in the southeastern United States, so Florida, and then I mean nobody's going to Florida and eating salad, right? We're just going to eat like greasy hamburgers and whatever else is over there, but whatever we eat in between the roller coaster rides in Florida, but it's pretty nasty if it insists in your brain. It can cause like very bad permanent physical and mental disabilities.
That is one hell of a sales pitch. It really is. Do you want rats around your home? Well, it's just a rat, isn't it? Do you want a worm drilling through your brain?
My marketing hat already has this one on. It's like, you've got to be brain damaged not to accept our offerings.
Yeah, we've also recently when we were doing, so we also and I don't know if you guys have done much of this in the UK, but like you can not just be genetically resistant, you can also like be metabolically resistant to anticoagulant rodenticides. And so we also, when we were doing our rat work, we wanted to see, was there any of this? Because like the idea being that like sometimes when we're looking at these resistant rat populations, you find them with more anticoagulant rodenticide residues in their system. And the idea being that the more residues you have, like the more able you are to metabolize these rodenticides. And so we wanted to see that. And it was funny. Like I always think like our job is just so funny, and some of the stuff that we get away with is just hilarious. So like we're in the parking lot, the car park of a school, right? And I do a lot of research in schools because there's so many rats in schools in Southern California. Insane, right? I know, doesn't that just blow your mind that the rat pressure is that like crazy? But so we're in these schools and we're in the car park and we're on the back of our truck, right? The bed is like, the boot or whatever is open. And it's great that I'm talking to my peoples here and I can use the right words. So the boot's down and we've got our dead rats and we've got our little thing of liquid nitrogen, right? Liquid nitrogen. And it's all women, right? It's these 4 women, right, on the back of this truck, and the blood everywhere in the dissected rats. And I was like, what's that there on the liver? Oh, right, just right there. And I get my scalpel and I like go like this, and I just start to pull, and it just goes and it goes and it goes, and I'm telling you, it's a tiny spot in the liver. I start to pull it out and just goes and goes and goes. And then we pull out this thing and it's like a tapeworm and it's like knotted in on itself. It's so long. It's absolutely disgusting. And my colleague from USDA is like, don't send me any of those livers. She's like, make sure you cut out the parasites before you send me those bits. But it was a liver. It was a rat parasite it was a cat parasite, right? So like a cat tapeworm.
Is that the one that?
No, you're not saying toxoplasmosis.
No, not It wasn't toxoplasmosis, but it was another one. Anyways, the only way you could actually get it is if you ate the rat. So that's probably not going to happen here, although we do have some of our unhoused population that have been shown to eat rats. And so it could happen. But yeah,
doesn't the education department worry about the rat populations in the schools? Or
you would think they would, but I'm telling you, the rat pressure here is just it blows my mind. And when I become the most aware of it is when my mother comes to visit me and she won't even go out into my backyard because she knows that we have rats. But everybody has rats in their backyard in Southern California. Wow. Everybody. So like, it's insane. That's what the pressure is. But none of us are dying of diseases. Well, not that we know of.
Wow. So with this, I mean, because California is a bit of a case study in this. It's always the first to ban. Currently, they've banned glue boards for both vertebrates and invertebrates, which is quite something.
In some cities, yeah.
But with that, of course, you know, where the escars have been reduced, banned. They've been brought back under special license in some places, haven't they? When it gets really bad, but generally,
there are some limited exemptions. But like, you're not like for example, like you're not able to apply them at a grocery store or a restaurant at all right now.
So my question being is, you are taking one for the team, so to speak, which is you are a valuable socio-economic case right now. You are the first ones that are going to have a problem. So it's been a year, 2 years since this really sort of like came into full effect. Are you seeing an uptick in people having diseases? Is there an uptick in sort of like urban fires from wiring being used? You know, what have been the effects of this wild increase in rodent numbers, or are we not seeing one? You know,
so so nobody's measuring anything, so I can't tell for sure. I can tell you what I've heard anecdotally. I reach out to people, and some people say it's worse. Some people say it's not worse. We have the rat apocalypse, so we don't know where that came from, and if it's related to like an upsurge in at least urban rodents, right, that has spilled over into agriculture, or if it's what I mentioned earlier, which is just this kind of perfect storm of other things. And people are saying, and it's impossible to get the data, and I've tried, that the amount of restaurants that have been closed has increased dramatically. And so that would be really interesting data to look at, but I cannot get a hold of it. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried to see, and obviously I would need it like over a number of years to see what it was like before the bans. And the bans have kind of been incremental, right? So we had, I think it was 2001, we had the second gens, and then I think it was 2004, we had difascinone.
I'm not going to push you on the question because it might be unpolitically correct to answer in your case. But do you think that the bans of anticoagulant rodenticide were just a knee-jerk reaction to a fluffy bunny wokey dokey brigade? Or do you think that it was actually justified?
So I don't think that there's any evidence that there is population level impact of exposure on wildlife in the US, to be really honest with you. So we have been monitoring, we've been kind of upping how we monitor rodenticide exposure, because we don't believe that scraping dead wildlife off the road is actually really painting a real picture of what's actually happening. And so what we've been doing is that we've been following rodenticide exposure in live coyotes, and we do that by picking up their poop, and we're able to tell genetically which individual coyote that came from, and we're also able to tell what they were exposed to. Okay, now we can't detect bromethylene and we can detect vitamin D3, but whether or not that's cholecalciferol or not is another story, right? So we can detect all the anticoagulant rodenticides. And we have followed some of those coyotes for like 60 weeks, so for over a year. And so we can't really look at what we would call sublethal effects, or like the hangover of the anticoagulant rodenticides. But we are seeing that these animals are getting exposed repeatedly, even to second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, even though they're mostly restricted, right? But we're not really seeing them die. And what's interesting is because we might lose track of them. And so I always talk about this one coyote, I think it was like M55, which is just this random male coyote. We have some collared, we have some uncollared. We don't need them to be collared to know who they are. the collared ones, we know where they've been, right? Yeah. And so M55 is an uncollared male. And like we detected him in like, and I'd have to pull the data up to know exactly, but say we detected him in like January of 2023. Okay. and it was exposed to chlorofascinone. It was exposed to 2, I think, second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides. And then we lost track of it, and then we picked him back up again in September of September, October, and November of that year. So like in all that time, he could have been dead, but he wasn't, right? And so we picked him up again, right? So that was 2023. We stopped sampling in January 2024, okay? In August 2025, a kid was bitten by a coyote in a park where we happened to have one of our collared individuals. And how the government reacts to that is that they usually go in and they kill coyotes, and they try and match it to the right one. So they actually do a DNA swab of the bite victim, and then they do DNA swabs of the animals that they removed. And so because one of them was our collared animals, we convinced them to give them to us. And so I got like 10 or 11 headless coyotes in me walk-in freezer, right? I love my walk-in freezer. It's amazing. I have to play dead animal frozen Tetris in it often, but like it's fine. But anyway, so we got these animals, and then it was funny because we took tissue samples, and I didn't take them out of the freezer in time. So it's basically like, is it carpaccio? Is that what you call that thinly sliced beef? That's what it was like, trying to get samples off it was because they cut the heads off to do rabies testing. So I had 10 or 11 headless bodies. I had scalpels, and we were like basically shaving off little like segments to send to our lab up at UC Davis. And so we send them up to our lab, and lo and behold, who comes back up? Only M55, right? And so like this animal is still, right? This animal that we found in January 2023 exposed to anticoagulant rodenticide. And then it was, we saw it in September and October 2023 again. And then we saw it again, and we'll have liver residues for it this time, right? Because we have its whole body. But the difference in the story is that if that animal had died, right, just there in 2025, it's exposed to anticoagulant rodenticides. We don't know that it's been exposed this whole entire time, right? And so I think that wildlife are getting exposed, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I just don't think that it has the population level impact that people think it's having. Now, should we be exposing wildlife to pesticides? No, but should we be coming up like, and this goes back to my thinking that if we had less rats, we'd have less exposure. And I think if we were focused more on trying to kill the rats as opposed to trying to prevent it happening further up the food chain, we'd actually be way further along in this journey than we are now, which is like, you guys have your owl work, right? You have your right, Richard Shore and Alan Buckle and those guys, they have these data sets that go on and on and on, and you have your changes and nothing changes, right? And nothing changes because you have this one single data point that is a really different story than what you see when you monitor for exposure in live individuals.
So yeah, and that's it. So I was literally just about to say that with our exposure monitoring, it's barn owls, and it's 100 barn owls a year, but almost exclusively our barn owls from road traffic incidents. The biggest killer of barn owls in the UK is not poison, it's vehicle windscreens. And with that, we know from a series of studies what the LD50 for most of the SCARs are to barn owls. And in like the 600 we've taken over the last 6 years, only 2, 3 are approaching the levels where theoretically it is an LD, where they might have died as a result of poisoning if they hadn't been walloped by a car first. So that's a vanishingly small number, and the impact, most of them, although it is detectable residues, I always find that phrase very misleading, because actually you can detect residues down to nanograms, picograms now. Like,
yeah, we're on like parts per billion now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very, very small amounts. And like the thing about that's lethal exposure. Of course, there could be sublethal impacts of exposure that we haven't really kind of teased apart. But like the thing about coyotes here in Southern California is that their populations are very, very healthy. They're everywhere, like everywhere. And they're not, like, once again, the number one cause of death is probably the crazy drivers that we have down here and the amount of insane traffic we have. But do things die from rodenticide exposure? Yes. Did P22 die from rodenticide exposure, Hugh? That line did not die from rodenticide exposure. That line was euthanized after a vehicular strike.
Yep.
Was it exposed to anticoagulant rodenticides? Yes, it
Probably.
was.
Yeah.
And so I think that anticoagulant rodenticides are important too. I don't think that we're using them properly, but I don't think we're using any of our tools properly, to be honest with you. I think that we can do better, but I don't know how. And I hate to say that we need to do better and not have some solutions. Now we've come up with some things that definitely do help, but it's not easy to manage rodents. We need to manage rodents. I think it's kind of almost ridiculous to think that we can seal up holes and be done with it when rats are all like we store people like people don't understand where our food is stored, right? Or how our food is produced and like the need for rodent management. Like, yeah, it blows my mind. And like there are disease risks. And then obviously there's allergen risks that we never talk about, right? We know that rat urinary proteins cause increased in asthma and sensitized children. Like that's something that we almost never talk about. And I always think of like the rats in the schools here and like how big of an issue it is. And like this is where we keep our sensitive populations. And so and it's the rat pressure in Southern California would blow your mind. Like I couldn't tell you how many times I've been in like the big kind of malls in America, like the outdoor malls in America that have like all these restaurants and seen rats. Like, can you imagine if that was happening in the UK or Ireland? Like people wouldn't go near them. But yeah, here's a rat. And people are like, oh, there's a rat. The attitude is just totally different. Like you only have to go to New York. Like go to New York. The rat people are picnicking essentially with the rats. They're sitting out in the parks. The rats are running around them. And they don't even know they're there. And they're so obvious. Like New York, I don't know how people go on holidays to New York. It's the most disgusting place I've ever been. And you guys know the smell of rats, and your listeners probably know exactly that smell. And you're walking to somewhere in New York and you're like, nope. I'm like, like, no. It's like, we're not eating here. Like, we just can't.
We've got like just a couple of minutes left, but this came up on a previous 4 minutes. We've got like 4. Okay, came up on a previous episode, but I'll ask you your opinion right here, which is basically one of our other guests said that he believes a lot of the issues that we are having as an industry with our communication with people outside the industry or people outside the industry understanding the risks is what he referred to as the Disneyfication of pest animals. So, you know, you've got Stuart Little, you've got Ratatouille, you have all of these sort of like affable Disneyfied characters. Yeah, there we go. Which diminish the impact that pests have. Yeah, everyone's got one. I've probably got one here somewhere as well. So do you believe...
you guys are going to laugh at this, so, and your listeners won't be able to hear this, but
that's big.
And I have 2 of these because my son has his own giant rat.
So do you believe therefore, so sorry, that finish that train of thought, that this Disneyfication, this sort of like anthropomization of rats is stopping people seeing the dangers that they have within them?
No, I don't think urban dwellers understand the importance of managing wildlife, and we live in managed systems. We have to manage all our wildlife to be like, wildlife can't really be wild because that's not really what we live in. And so like our deer populations are managed. You know, controversially, obviously we have the badger and TB issue in the UK and Ireland. You know, our bird populations are managed. And like, so like populations, especially that are in urban communities, they can't go unmanaged. They just can't. And that people don't understand that.
Nope.
I think that's part of it.
I could go on for another half-hour rant now, but I'm not going to have to leave it for another
the next 18 months. We could come back in 18 months.
Come on, Hugh, rant.
Well, it was just, you know, the whole trail hunting thing and how it's going to it's going to move on to mission creep. And once they've got trail hunting banned, they'll move on to fishing, and then they're going to move on to something else. Then they're going to move on to pest control. Then we're going to have to live with the rats because they're God's creatures and everybody deserves a place on the earth, and it's just going to snowball.
There was a really interesting paper at the Vertebrate Pest Conference the last time, not this one just gone, but the last one, where this researcher from Belgium just gave this really great paper about like how rats are sentinel beings, and like it's really important to understand these views and how like the humaneness of pest control is becoming a really big thing. And like if the industry does not get in there, you're like, that's it, you're gone. Like you have to start to evolve, because this is exactly how we're going, right?
Yeah.
The Disney rats, etc.
So in the UK at the moment, we are undergoing. So again, this is for anyone listening who's listened this far. There is a public call at the moment for a review on all of our mole traps, and this is exactly as we were saying here. A lady called Sandra Baker did a review on the humaneness of traps, including mole traps, and found that the majority of mole traps were not sufficient to actually kill a mole, throttle it to death maybe, but not kill a mole. And so there's that. But that it shows that people are sitting up and taking definitely more of an interest in not necessarily the morality of pest management, but certainly like the ethics of it, the view of society as opposed to the view of the individual there. So, and of
moral
that,
vanity.
Pardon?
Moral vanity.
Yes and no. I mean, I understand what you're saying with that, but I would say that we have a perception that what we do it out of sort of like the enjoyment of killing, and we don't, and that's the hurdle that we need to get over. You know, not all of us don't, but you know, it's the humaneness element. Nothing is humane, but we are not inhumane, and that's, I think, what we need to get across. Maybe.
No, the moral vanity is the thing, is that the people are being morally vain in telling us that we can't control a pest problem because of the fluffy bunny brigade, their Disneyfication of them,
of pests.
you know, and it's a slippery slope that we are on, and we need to stick up for ourselves.
We do, or we just need to be able to talk about it more fully, or honestly, or openly, without having to, you know, throw words, shapes, or shoes. Yeah,
it is a health issue, and that's the end of the story, really. On that note,
on that
note, we're gonna say good night, because we've run out of time. If you hang around for a minute, Niamh, afterwards, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
so it's
fun to be here as usual.
It's goodbye from this side of the pond, and it's goodbye from that side of the pond.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.